Hello everyone! This is going to be the Twin Worlds update for Boris's route. I actually found out that both him and Nightmare have pretty much the same exact opening, but there is a branch off point, which is where we stopped the video the last time to choose. And so there's going to be a kind of extended scene with the character that you pick at the beginning, after choosing who it was that you stayed for during the last game. It then goes on to all of the other opening events for a second set of them, and that one involves all of the territories. Afterwards, which it's strictly a visual novel, we don't do any spamming, so that's why it's important that we make sure that we hit those choices when they're meant to be hit. So we will be starting back at that point on Nightmare's route when we get to him. If you guys chose this one, then this is that update. I pre-recorded it.
Presented by Queen Rosen.
Okay, we were at this one. And so we're going to choose Boris. And she's like, Boris, I was told by an employee that I should have returned to my room and instead visited Boris's room. She's like, ... She's still knocking. She's like, so no reply, and again I tried hitting the door stronger than before. She's like, Boris? No? You're not in? Waiting for a while, somehow there was a sign that people moved behind the door.
Alice.
And then you hear Boris say Alice. A mellow, sleepy voice. Maybe he was napping. Boris, who opened the door, showed her his face and seemed to be asleep beforehand, as expected. I'm sorry, were you trying to sleep?
Ah. あんたも次の時間帯には仕事だっていうから暇だったしね。
Boris tells her you said you were working until the next time change, so that you weren't free. And she's like, you wouldn't want me to wake you up? Question mark.
あにゃ、まずくなんかないよ。あんたならいつだって大歓迎。
He cuts her off. He's like, I don't want it to be awkward. You're always welcome after a pause. And that's why he invited you into the room. I don't care about the sloppy standard in the sense that if I can sleep well, I don't care what he can do with the room. But I also want to get involved here, and so I entered without hesitation.
何？嵐のことが気になっているの？
He's like, what? Are you worried about the storm? I stopped by and was found out immediately. He's sharp, even just waking up. She's like, Boris is such a man. He seems to be casual with me, but I see a lot of things. And she's like, why do you think that is so?
顔に書いてあるよ。あんたってほんと自分の常識の範疇を超えたことってなかなか流せないよね。
He tells her it's written on your face. You know, you are beyond your usual wisdom on this, and it's hard to get through it. She's like, no, I don't think so. I mean, I often think about you becoming something else a lot, in sarcasm. I answered while turning my head with my eyes looking sideways at him. Was I so easy to understand? That's true. I'm very familiar with this world, and I'm pretty good at dealing. In the first place, this is a world that may be my dream. You can't help worrying about what happens in your dreams, and if you think it is so, then most things can flow like this. The reason why I can't do that, and then she trailed off, is because Boris is at the forefront end, and then she trails off again. She's like, it involves people living in this world, and what's more is it can make someone crazy. So she's like thinking about the storm and like how it affects everyone. And she's like, this is why I can't just let it go. She's like, that's not ridiculous. It's harder to see it be weird now. Like her concerns. I stayed in this world because they were them, like themselves. And she's like, hey, can you tell me more about this crazy storm? He recommended that I sit, and then he put me on the sofa. While sitting down, I asked him this. She's like, I don't feel refreshed because I don't really understand what's going on.
どんな現象って言われてもな。
He's like, well, what kind of phenomenon is it said to be? ... Boris, sitting next to her, seems to be worried.
さっき言った通りなんだよね。嵐が来たのは感覚と風でわかる。普段は吹かない強い風が吹いたら、それが合図だ。
Boris is like, you're right. As I said earlier, the storm comes from the senses and the wind, ... If there is a strong wind that doesn't normally blow, then that would be the signal of the storm coming. And then she's like, do you remember the wind? And like cat ears move rapidly when she asks.
風はしばらく続いて、吹き止んだ時には、俺たちは全員どこかおかしくなっているってわけ。
He tells her the wind has been going on for a while and trailed off. And then he's like, when we are blown with it too, that's when we're all going to go crazy. And she's like repeating back that it makes everything go crazy, ... She's like, what? I'm staring at Boris's profile while inquiring this in secret. Isn't this the first time that the storm has actually come? It was supposed to be like that, but I checked if it was for the time being.
そうだよ。めったには起こらないけど、初めてじゃない。
And he's like, yes, that's right, it rarely happens, but it's not the first time. And she's like, so what have you been up to for it until now? So like, what have you been doing to prepare for it up until now? And she's like, if you ask this directly, you will get an answer. And somehow Boris rounded his eyes, though. Like he looked surprised. Why do you have such a face? She asked after a pause. If you've experienced it several times, tell me what you have done to prepare for it so far. She's like, if you listen to him, then you will have a concrete image of what kind of changes will come. Or I thought so, at least. And trailed off.
ごめん、それを答えるのは無理だ。自分の変化はわからないんだよ。
He tells her, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I don't know my changes. And she's like, what? What? I open my mouth. What does it mean not to know? Is it deceit? Why don't you know? You know enough about what it is to say that it's fun or that it is not a big deal, question mark. In the end, he looked up. Boris spreads both hands in front of her face, saying, as if, well, calm down.
わからないんだよ、自分自身の変化は。クレイジーストームに狂わされると、自分にはそれが普通に思えるんだ。
Boris tells her, I don't know. My changes don't seem crazy to me when I'm going crazy by a crazy storm. It's like it's normal. And she's like, normal?
そう。最初からずっとそうだったように思えるんだよ。それが異変だっていうことに気づかない。
He tells her, yes. From the beginning, it seems like it has always been normal, and I don't realize that it's an anomaly.
で、元に戻った時には、今度は起こった変化を忘れている。だから自分じゃどこがおかしかったのかは把握できないんだ。
He's like, so when I went back to normal, I forgot that the changes happened even this time, and so I can't figure out what went wrong. He's like, it disappeared the memory of it. She's like, I see. That's ... Being mad, it's not just about the state that they're in. And being mad, it's not just about the state that they are in. Although it's not a big deal, the residents themselves are actually ridiculous, so it will be crazy, she thinks. She's like, that's not ... It's troublesome! ! He looks like an addict or something. Isn't that reason the subject is skipped so much? Isn't that the reason that the subject is skipped so much? Because there's actually no memory left?
でも他人のことならわかるんだぜ。
He's like, oh, but do you know that it's also about to hit the others so we can see? And she's like, what? Is that so? Everyone thought that everything was fine without knowing what was wrong then. But if you think about it, if you don't notice the changes of others, then you can't explain what the storm is.
気づかないのは自分のことだけ。他人の異変ならはっきりわかるよ。
He tells her, yes, the only thing that you don't notice is yourself. And she's like, then ... what is normal? Then what is Galland up to? What has changed with Galland in this familiar place other than his normal self?
おっさん？何度かあって忘れたのもあるけど、確か前回はいつも持っているバイオリンが変わったかな。
He's like, the Osan, the old uncle. He's like, well, I've forgotten a few times, but ... I guess the last time it changed his actual violin.
その前は三つ編みが2本に増えた。いや、3本だったっけ？
He's thinking out loud. He's like, before that, the number of his braids has increased to 2. Or no, was it 3? And then he trailed off. She's like, what? 2 braids? No, 3. What? And then she trailed off. She's like, 3 ... What? But that's not the point, no matter how many braids he has. And then she trailed off. Although it might be strange, even if only one is funny, it will increase this even more for him. He must have read my impressions from my facial expression, though, because Boris laughed with a broken look on his face.
くだらないだろ？バイオリンなんてさ、子供の持っているおもちゃみたいのに変わったんだよ。
He's like, you don't want to get it? You don't want to think about it? It's a violin, like a toy that a child has. So he's like, don't you, think that's cool? Type of thing.
弾こうとしたら音が出なくて。でもさ、これでいいかって感じで延々弾き続けているんだぜ。
He's like, if he did try to play it, the old days of playing will not come out. So, his atrocious music will not come out. But Uncle, he feels that this is okay and just keeps playing for a very long time. And she's like, a violin that doesn't have any sound? ?
そう、鳴らないバイオリンを。 あれはむしろ救いだったな。元に戻ったのが残念で仕方なかった。
He's like, it's a good thing, because yes, a violin that doesn't sound like anything. That was rather a salvation that time. She's like, ... I think so too. She's like, Boris also suffered considerable damage from Galen's sound waves when he goes, like, vocal with his violin. It's great if you can't hear the sound, even if you're working comfortably during it. And she's like, I also want to welcome these changes. What? What's that about? She, like, thinks to herself. What was I just thinking? She's like, something more, ... I thought about this, that big things would occur. Galand isn't Galand, and Boris is no longer Boris. She's like, if that happens. And if Galand stops playing, I'll feel happy and lonely at the same time. She's like, no, well, I'm happy about it, actually. She's like, the instrument has just changed, and it is not the change that changes the origin of the music. So she's like, just because the instrument changes doesn't mean he will. So she would welcome that kind of a change. His instrument just going faulty. After a while, it will return to the original, though, she thinks. If it did. And she's like, that's a nice change, and I would be laughing too if it was just the instrument.
納得したみたいだね。安心できた?
He's like, I feel like ... you weren't convinced before that you were scared. And she's like, ah! Exclamation mark, and then she's all blushing. Returned to me is the voice of Boris. This time his body is closer than before. Soon after I refused, he was relaxed and then just like saw to hearing my heartbeat. And she tells him, don't say people were scared. She's like, I strengthened my resolve, actually. ... There was some fear. She's like, if you are told that something of a person that you like will change suddenly, and then she trailed off. You must explain properly, you, and then she's like, you didn't ... because she kept trailing off in between. Saying this quietly while putting distance between your bodies, even if you pull away, Boris will just close the distance again, and so this will not change.
まあ、そういうことにしておいてあげるよ。せっかくの話なんだ。あんたも楽しめばいい。
Boris is like, well, I'll leave you with that, like that information. It's a great storm, and you can enjoy it too. He says this, rubbing against your body. Tickling the cat is always comfortable, like this. She's like, festival me, or festival, huh? She's like, I told you that too, that the decorations in the park are progressing steadily. And I wonder if Boris says that this is a festival. I found out what happened as a concrete example. And if he says he doesn't have to worry, that's true. I understand there are many parts that I can't imagine, but I'll do as you say for the time being, she tells him with a relaxed look. Originally, just being in this world is a series of extraordinary sequences for me, and the storm coming from now on is just one of them.
そうこなくちゃ。もちろん宴会も参加するだろ?
He's like, it has to be that way, and it is so, and he's like, of course we'll banquet also here, so participate, ? She's like, I wonder if it is not too much work, but won't it be until it's over that the park is actually closed, she asked him.
休園はしない。嵐の時だからこそ遊園地で騒いで過ごしたいって客もいるからね。
He tells her it does not close because it is a storm, and there are customers who want to spend time at the amusement park.
従業員は仕事をしながら交代で宴会に参加。けど、あんたは休みを取りなよ。あんたがいないなんて俺がつまらないだろ。
He tells her that employees take part in the banquet while working, but don't take a break. And he's like, ... I'm boring you, aren't I? And And she's like, it said sweet, like rubbing against your cheeks. And she's like, I'm vulnerable to this warmth, because he moves against her again. She's like, yes, I'm going to adjust to this, she tells him. Large banquets with employees are sometimes held, and then the rumor of the rude ruckus is an unimaginable scene in the other territories when that occurs. She's like, speaking of other territories, ... Suddenly, I care. How will the territories other than the amusement park react to a storm? Heart Castle, and then Childish Hatter Mansion, the Clock Tower. The other actors in each territory are all of my friends. Gallon said that they don't know about the other territories, but they don't always welcome them like they do me. In any case, all of the role holders are unique, and some people have a personality that seems to just hate hair or things such as festival events. Other types, such as the ultimate troublesome type or hysterical type, and she trails off and looks exasperated. ... Let's go play when work is over, she says. What will the other territories look like before the storm? And she's like, I was interested in this. And a woman's like, it looks like a storm is coming.
ああ、そうだな。俺、今回はどんな風になっちまうんだろう。楽しみなような、不安なような。
A man says, oh, that's right. I'm not sure what will happen this time.
それが嵐ってものでしょ。考えたってどうにもならないんだから、気楽に待ちましょう。
A woman like, it's a storm. I can't help thinking about it.
嵐か。自分がどうにかなるよりも、神さんがおかしなことにならないかが心配だぜ。
A man's like, Arashi, the storm. He's like, I'm more worried that Kami won't be weirder than what I'm going to do during it.
同感だ。いきなり散財でもするような趣味になられちゃたまらないよな。
And another man answers, I agree. Suddenly I can't stand the hobbies that I would do even with my miscellaneous goods. She has no response to all this conversation about the storm around her. She's like, the people in the city are already aware of the storm. I wanted to see the state of the other territories, and as you walk down the streets of the city, you hear a lot of voices talking about crazy storms. Someone who is looking forward to it, those anxious, and then, like, the reaction varies from person to person, but no one seems to be seriously concerned. As told to me by Nightmare and my housemates, even if it is a little annoying or troublesome, it seems that there is no big deal. Or you may have just given up and decided on it being unavoidable, she thinks, ... She's like, what about everyone in the other territories after a pause? And she's like, when I was walking while thinking, I came to a path through the forest. There is a road ahead. She's like, where are we going? And then we're going to actually end this video here, you guys, because this is where the branching part ends, and I believe this actually is where it picks up for Nightmare's route. So those events, I'm going to do them in separate videos, because they're interchangeable. But this was the branching choice, and then, like, basically, how we get onto Boris's route to begin with. And we will be doing a new save. That way I can just go right back to that other one and start Nightmares next time when we're doing him.